To be fair. Good afternoon, everyone. I am the youngest, most hair-flowing man in 40K. Here with Sean, Dice with Rice. And we're going to talk, per Brad request, about Tyranids today on Deal With It. I want you to know that Sean was evil, and he gave one of the options to not go live this afternoon. And I said, what kind of communist Tau nation do you live in where we don't go live at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time? This is crazy talk.
That's right. Sometimes I just go insane, and I want Brad to live through the day sometimes.
Whoa. That just sounds awful.
Yeah, this is just crazy talk. It's just crazy talk.
I did like the fact that you saw me last night and you were like, yeah, man, you should probably do anything else. Yeah. Let's talk about things. I'm actually excited about talking about Tyranids today because I think Tyranids are not performing up to what their potential is from the book out of the meta reports. I think this is a fantastic army. I think it has a ton of options. I think it has a high epic learning curve. Sean, tell us about our 5 steps that we deal with it.
All right, so if you're new to Deal With It, what Brad and I do every Tuesday at 2 p.m., we take a faction, we give you the no paywall, just straight answers about the faction, what's good, what's not, and how do you actually deal with everyone else with your faction. So first thing, you got to prepare. You got to know what's in your army and what you want to be doing with it. You got to know what your army is great at and what it's weak at and how that stacks up to everyone else. Then you have to know, hey, how am I taking fixed secondaries? Am I taking tactical secondaries? And what are my units that I need to be taking that really feed into my plan of fixed or tactical? Then you got to know how to practice. There are ways to practice every single army, and all of them are just a little bit different. Finally, you have to make adjustments. After you've made this plan, you're trying to execute it, you're practicing with it, you're going to have stuff that doesn't work for you and stuff that does. And that's where we get to the making adjustment step.
Let's talk about, first off, as usual, we get our quote from Sean. The Horde fights neither for power nor territory, but rather to feed a hunger so insatiable that it will eventually devour the galaxy, and eventually we will get one of our PowerPoints without spelling errors. But that will not be this day. So, let's talk. As I talk shit as I did nothing for this PowerPoint. Oh, shit. Carmona, what the hell? Mr. Carmona was supposed to pick me up and have dinner with me in San Diego, and then all of a sudden he decided instead to get wildly not great. We talked about this. I thought you were already out. I apologize. You are still not great. Carmona, love you, buddy. I hope you do well and you feel great.
Yeah, feel better, man.
So, in what I like to call why people hate Sean's face, he wants to talk about why certain detachments are competitive and other detachments aren't, and then I'm going to disagree with it so I get more love from the community because I need to feel special and a pretty princess.
That's right. There's only good cop and bad cop in every single way.
So, competitive focus, evasion fleets, fantastic. Synaptic Nexus, I love it. Vanguard Onslaught, I think, is a little too tricksy. Narrative focus, Sean says, on any swarm. I'd like to flip that in Vanguard. Simulation Swarm, Crusher Stampede isn't actually a detachment. I'm sorry. It is paying for the sins of its father. It is bad. It's sitting with the first company right now. So...
Yeah, not so great on that.
Yeah, man. Fucking he told me. Dude, got to keep that blood pressure at a real people's level, not explosion levels. I did miss you. As usual, the PSA goes narrative focus doesn't mean you can't be competitive in or win games. He's just saying that he feels that's where the power level is of that. So when you're looking to make your feel for, is this going to do well? Anything can do well except for Crusher Stampede. So
I didn't say that. That's Brad. That's Brad. Brad being Brad right now. But yeah, no. Just putting it into focus of what they're focusing on. Like, if you're going to go play an RTT and you want to just jam some Assimilation Swarm, do it, man. There's plenty you can do to win games. We're talking about specifically if you're trying to go 9-0 at the biggest tournament possible. Some things are going to be better for doing that, not necessarily more competitive. They're just going to be better suited for what the meta is going to be throwing at you. So just something to keep in mind.
You want to play on hard mode, do it.
Yeah.
I do like Pedro's idea. It's going to be First Company versus Crusher Stampede all games.
Oh, man, if you want to bring a pillow fight, yeah, let's do it.
So let's talk. There's a lot of combos in these lists. I mean, like a lot, even more than we've had lately. It's. Do you want to?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm just gonna let you rock through these because.
Yeah, just let me roll through them.
I tend to go. I don't know if you've ever noticed. I don't really stay on topic as well as Sean does. So I'm gonna let him hit the combos to start.
Yeah, there's a lot here, and some people really enjoy this part. So Invasion. This is the one you've been playing for a while. The first combo here is a shooting combo. Basically, it's how you get reroll ones on a unit for your army to shoot at, and you ignore its cover. When an Exocrine finishes shooting at somebody, your army gets reroll ones on it. When a Pyrovore shoots an enemy, it loses cover. And then your adaptation lets you get either lethal hits against monsters and vehicles, or exploding sixes against infantry. All of this combines to be some pretty reasonable shooting out of Tyranids. Then you have Insert Your Hive Tyrant. This is going to be a theme going through all these detachments. Every detachment in Tyranids has a pretty good battle tactic stratagem you want to use, and the Hive Tyrant lets you use it on your turn and your opponent's turn. Just the fact that that generates a bunch of CP for you is going to be really valuable.
Go with that for free.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
for
it's
free
just
is
so,
the key here.
So good. So what is the first one doing? First one is you can make a tanky Hive Tyrant, and then you can spam out a 5-up Feel No Pain if you're in Synapse range. When you're playing NIDS, we'll get to this, you want to be in Synapse range most of the time, and if you are building a list effectively, you probably will be in Synapse range. This is one of the next combo is Old One Eye and Carnifexes. This one's kind of fallen by the wayside. You can play Old One Eye by himself, and he's perfectly tough little bug that does way more damage than he should. When paired with the Carnifex, he's going to be a tough little unit that rerolls hits. And that really helps out since Carnifexes don't hit great in melee. Then we have one of the longest combos, and you can kind of do this in any NIDS list. Their theme is kind of battle shocking. So Neurotyrant, your opponent gets -1 to their tests during Shadows. Neurolictors also hand out a battle shock in your turn.
Let's pause on this. If you don't have Neurolictors in your army, why? They are so fantastic.
Correct.
Lone op, they literally give out shock tests, and you can do so many different combos. We're going to be going back to them quite a bit. It's one of the units that is new once they release that, and it is a premium auto include for me.
Yeah, it is definitely a pushed unit. The big thing about Neurolictors you need to know is when they're handing out their battle shock test, your opponent can't auto pass it because the auto pass stratagem can only be used on their turn. And since it's your turn when they're taking the tests, you just have to roll and hope you don't roll bad. And if you do, the Neurolictors start going to do some crazy things, like give you their unit -1 to hit when it's battle shocked, and give your army benefits when attacking that unit. Then you have Deathleaper, who does similar things, but mainly he's just a great lone op that debuffs leadership as well.
This one has a weird amount of attacks. He does a little bit of juice.
Yeah, no. You do not charge. You do not charge lictors and expect things to go well. They are very efficient at taking down small units. Plus, just having an invuln really helps. Then we have the standalone Biovore. Yes, this is the combos page, and I'm going to talk about the Biovore as a standalone combo piece because I think a lot of how Tyranids functions now is how well do you play this Biovore? Yes, at its base level, it just sits on your back objective and makes some spores. Cool. But really, when you start denying deep strikes with spores, you start setting up investigate signals from turn 1 on. When you prevent that your opponent's entire Stormlance, Thunderwolf Cav, and Thunderwolf accessories from charging anywhere near you by just placing one spore mine, whew, this takes a lot of skill to play correctly in just about every matchup. So that's why he's going as a little one-piece combo.
It's pretty legit.
Yeah, I think I told somebody I was helping with NIDs. I think what determines a great Tyranid player really has to do with how they play their Biovore and how much value they can get out of just that one Biovore. Then, this is kind of what Unending Swarm, which we'll get to later, wants, which is you take a big pile of Termagants, Gargoyles, whatever, Neurogants. You put them with a Zoanthrope for an invuln. You put them near some Venomthropes. That gives them -1 to hit and cover. Cover you don't really care about that much because they don't have great saves. And then you give them a 5-up Feel No Pain, and then start just regrowing D3 plus 3 of them. This is such an annoying little combo for not that many points. I believe a unit of Neurogants is 90, some Venomthropes are 70, and then, of course, Zoanthropes are like 110. But you get a lot of bodies with just invulns, -1 to hit, Feel No Pain, and Neurogants have, all Gaunts actually, have OC.
Yeah, and the fact that they're 45 points for 11 guys is a fantastic value too.
Yeah. Just really pushing the max of how much can you get for the smallest amount of points. The next one is a little cheeky combo that I have used a few times now, which is you take a Norn, whichever flavor you want, doesn't matter, and then you combine it with the Overrun stratagem. And what that lets you do is if you are not in engagement range with anybody, when you would pile in, you can then make a normal move of 6 inches. And you just turn into John Cena, where you kill a little tiny unit and you go, now you don't see me. And then you go behind the wall. And that is very, very powerful when you can get it to work. And then finally, one goofy combo you can do, which is just rapid ingressing in a Trigon. The Trigons can come in close, and they have, I believe, 12 attacks at strength 9, AP 2, flat 3 damage. And that really makes your opponent pause on what they're going to do on their turn when a giant snake can just show up 3 inches away from them.
I mean, that is pretty close for a giant snake.
Yeah, it's not something you want to have to deal with.
I mean, also, there's just zero chance that I'm not going to immediately put up a John Cena gif.
Oh yeah,
I'm just saying that.
I'm just saying Norn's drifting behind a wall is not what you want to deal with, because you don't want to charge that guy.
Boom. There we go. Cena in the house.
Nice. Nice.
I couldn't help it.
And yes, this is the boring attachment. This is the one that I think is still really good, but everybody knows about this one. So let's get to the new stuff. Synaptic.
It's my favorite.
They have one of the best enhancements that I have ever seen in the Psychostatic Disruption. What does this do? Well, first of all, it gives one guy you can't deep strike within 12. Okay, so reinforcements can't ride within 12. But it does something that is just bonkers other than that. When your opponent would bring in reinforcements on turn 1 or turn 2, on a 4-up, they just can't.
Yeah, that's huge. And,
what?
And the thing is like, I know people had said, oh, well, it doesn't always work. Yeah, but your opponent doesn't know that. So
exactly.
They have to plan on, hey, is my entire reserves plan, what I'm trying to shoot, how I'm trying to achieve this, going to work? It's fantastic.
Yeah, and I don't know, something like Centurion Devastators that just want to come off and come back on. If they don't come back on a 4-up, that army does not have any damage that turn. So that is a terrifying thing to play against. The next combo, of course, as I said in the beginning, you're going to take a Hive Tyrant a lot of the time when you're playing Tyranids. Free strats are just money all over. What Synaptic does is Synaptic gets a battle tactic, which is just Armor of Contempt for Tyranids. Just pretty good, especially when you can give -1 damage to.
I was just about to say, you give -1 damage to the Hive Tyrant. That's for me, I love that enhancement on that. -1 damage to the Hive Tyrant, and then you're just spamming out Armor Contempt is a huge deal.
Because a lot of times a good player will try to get rid of your Hive Tyrant, and turns out a Hive Tyrant with AOC for free and -1 damage, and then you give some other guy AOC for a CP. That's really tough to crack. And you're usually who's that other guy? It's usually a Maleceptor or a Norn Emissary, Assimilator, what have you. The next one is the funniest combo in NIDS. So you take this enhancement called the Dirge Cart of Keras and combine it with the Parasite, who's like the only guy it can go on reasonably. And then you get this crazy combo. What does this whole string of words do? Basically, it makes your opponent fail battle shocks. And then with your Hive Tyrant, usually a winged one, I would say in this kind of list, you just roll dice, and on 3-ups, when your opponent fails a battle shock, they just take mortals. And you can do that twice. That just kind of breaks the game in one sense, because your opponent, usually you're picking a unit that's on an objective, you're taking your Neurolictor and saying, hey, you over there, you don't have any OC anymore. And then suddenly when you just drop mortals on them in addition, that kind of breaks the parity of the game a little bit. And I really like that out of Synaptic as an interesting tool that not a lot of armies have access to.
I think I like the Synaptic strats quite a bit. So I think they're very utilitarian. They're used every single turn, and that's why I think the Hive Tyrant is a must in that particular detachment.
Yep. And you might notice that I'm leaving off not so much a combo here, but Synaptic does have a stratagem to pick a unit within 24 inches and visible to a Synapse Psyker, and everybody within 6 inches of that unit rerolls 1s to hit and wound against that unit. I consider that just a good stratagem because Tyranids have a lot of things that can do that, and not so much a combo in the sense of like the Biovore, who just scores all your points and is a real big problem for your opponent. But yes, you should know if you take a big unit of Zoanthropes and string it out long ways, and then just give it a 6-inch aura from all those models of reroll 1s hit and wound, you can take down a knight pretty easy. So keep that in mind too.
Manic's got a good point on this. He goes, although keeping NID win rates low, with a lot of new players, list building paralysis is one of the big things for the sub 50% win rate. And I would agree with that because it's the same kind of factors you have with both the NID and the Marine books is there's so many factors in building this, and none of them are just autos, that it means that you have to really hone your skills with this army.
Yeah, as we'll get to in some of the list building, like there are a lot of good players playing NIDs and doing well with them. But I would say the skill level for this army, the skill level required, it can be pretty high to get maximum results out of here. And especially when we don't really, spoiler, we don't really have a good answer to Night Spinners as Tyranids. And my favorite build, which is just Godzilla. Yeah, I want to play Godzilla, which is just 3 Norns, and that is not very good when they do not go very far. Anyway, before we get too distracted, moving on to the Vanguard. This is the tricksy one. This has been the most fun for me to play. I especially like this combo here because it reminds me of what I was doing with Flayed Ones, which is just a bunch of attacks hitting on 2s. So you take a Wing Prime and you put them with some melee warriors. This gives them the all-important Vanguard keyword. Surprise Assault gives them +1 to hit, and you pick a unit on the board, and they have to take a Battle Shock test. That can be pretty powerful when you're spamming it with a Winged Hive Tyrant, where you just suddenly be like, hey, would you take a Battle Shock test for me? Hey, also, would you take another Battle Shock test for me? And conveniently, these melee warriors already have twin-linked weapons and reroll 1s to hit. So now you have a unit with 42 Strength 5 AP 2 attacks, exploding 6s, hitting on 2s, rolling 1s, and then just rerolling all wounds. That's a real unit. That is like a real thing you have to worry about if you're playing against Tyranids.
I love that you said it's a real unit. Like, guys, it's not Santa Claus. It's not the Easter Bunny.
No.
It's a real unit.
And I'm
Take
saying that
that to the
because
bank.
you were always, we were really down on Warriors at the start of the edition as like, oh, they're such a shadow of their former self, and they are, to be fair. But nobody wants those transhuman warriors back. I mean, come on, don't do that. But this is like a real Tyranid warrior unit that you really have to consider if you're playing against Vanguard. Like it has some damage, and that's, as we'll get to, that is a weakness of Tyranids, is maximum damage is not something they do very well. The next one is just making more battle shot combos, but also throwing in gargoyles at your opponent right away. Vanguard has the ability to drop gargoyles on your opponent on turn 1 at a rapid ingress, TO allowing. And if you've played against gargoyles, we're going to get to it. Gargoyles are phenomenal. They have the ability to deep strike, obviously, but whenever they shoot, they move. And when you just got gargoyles flying in out of left field and then suddenly like blocking in front of you, and you're like, I didn't really want to deal with these guys this turn. And then like, that's great. I have 2 more units like that, and we're going to do this again for 3 turns. That is not what you want to be dealing with, as your opponent does not want to be dealing with all these gargoyles. And then the last few is kind of the key of Vanguard is they actually have a good redeploy. You do get to see who goes first, and you can do silly things like deploy 18 Von Ryan's Lictors right in front of your opponent, and you don't even really have to charge anything. You can just like roll an advanced die and just stand your army in front of them, and they can't move anymore.
Those guys are awesome. We're in Vanguard, by the way. In Vanguard, specifically.
Very, very specifically Vanguard.
Let's go with this. Tell me a little bit about Unending Swarm, because I actually think this is a little bit underrated, but it is very matchup dependent. I love Unending Swarm for, wait for it, something that's near and dear to me, team tournaments. This is my go-to Tyranid fleet for teams, because if you can pick what they're playing against, it is phenomenal. It also is really good at taking some of the top armies in the game and denying them points, because they can put so much OC, they can make it really annoying, especially against armies that are really good at picking up 2 things a turn. And there's several armies that are great at that. They put a huge amount of damage into 2 targets. Well, they're going to regen up one, and they're going to bring back the dead from the other. So it does a ton of stuff, and all of a sudden you have giant units of gargoyles, giant units of termagants, touching all your things, making you feel really annoyed, like your little brother's in your stuff.
That's honestly exactly what it feels like. Brad and I actually were talking about the California Cup and how I don't think Brad would have had a good matchup into an Unending Swarm list. When you're already trying to skimp on damage for maximum play into armies like Eldar, your opponent just saying, here's 160 gaunt bodies is not what you want it to see. So what are the actual combos here? You're rapid ingressing in some gargoyles, yes, but the detachment ability for Unending Swarm, if you don't know, is whenever they are shot, they move d6 inches closer to the closest enemy. They have a stratagem that says just move d6 inches closer to the closest objective. So if you just throw gargoyles right in front of them, or conveniently where they could move on to an objective, your opponent is now a little bit concerned. If you shoot the gargoyles and can't take them out in one activation, they're just going to move out of line of sight and take an objective. That is bad news bears when they have 60 gargoyles. In addition to all this, there is the actual damage combo for this army, which is you get lethal exploding 5s on bricks of gargoyles or termagants when they're near the Tervagon, and when you're using stratagems from, you guessed it, a Hive Tyrant, who can double up on them. It's almost like this is going to be in a theme all the time. Then, just in case your opponent thought they could kill your units, you have the ability to take on one unit. If they shoot you with a blast weapon, you can just say, you don't get blast. That is a huge deal.
Yep, and it's on targeting too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and you don't get to what Brad and I mean by that is you don't get to just say, okay, well, I'm going to shoot somebody else instead. No, you're locked in your blast weapon that you need to deal with 160 Termagant bodies now is way less effective. And if for some reason they take out one of your units, you can pay 2 CP and get it back. If you're keeping along with me here, that is potentially 80 gargoyles you have to deal with in a game. That is not what I want to be doing with my life. And then finally, the same durability combo you can kind of have where you give all these gaunts and invuln, give them all -1 to hit, and just be generally annoying as you take over the entire board.
Well, let's talk about what we need. And I think this is a big deal because some of the armies I see just don't include enough of these. What's scoring our secondaries? The Biovore shooting that lone spore. Solo Ripper Swarms, you should have multiples in your army. If you don't have multiple gargoyles, I'm not even mad, I'm just disappointed. Neurolictors, as I already said, they have so much value for 65, it's just bonkers now. Who's holding your objectives? Neurolictors, Deathleaper, Biovore. The army identity is board control, and it is board control in every single fleet. It's not just trying to punch, it is stealing the board, scoring objectives. It can score secondaries crazily. Don't worry about just being the most damage. This army can score points like no one's business. Now, as always, I'm going to give the PSA of what's going on at events to Mr. Sean.
Yeah, so this is something you got to know. When you build a Tyranid list, there are some better options for player place, and there's some better options for GW. Personally, I think Norns are much better on GW terrain because they are universally going to have cover. And because you can move through GW terrain if it is under 2 inches tall, and as they've said, most of it will be able to move through, you actually can move your Norn pretty easily around the board. Now, on the opposite side of that, if you're playing more player-placed, I really like a lot of Zoanthropes and Exocrines. You have really good range on Exocrines, and when you can create big firing lanes, they can just stand still and get +1 to hit. That's very valuable. Finally, if you know you're going to be playing against NIDs on Sites of Power, you can bully them, because most of the time, they're only going to be running 1 or 2 characters, maybe 3. And if they can't get them on the objectives because they actually need them to play the game, then you can rack up a pretty big primary score against them.
Which is why you always paint a name on the bottom of the base of your Norn.
Exactly. And that is exactly right. Nina the Norn. Yeah,
exactly.
Let's throw them in there.
Everyone, because we get yelled at, I don't want KR to scream at me later. Please like and subscribe to the channels, both of them. Doing them both solo right now. Both solo. That doesn't even make sense. We're going both on both channels right now. It really helps us show up on everything. So please, please, please.
Yeah, as we've seen time and time again, Brad gets tons of messages. I get tons of messages. A lot of people really need this information when they're starting out, and Brad and I are fighting the metrics to get it to them. So if you could help us out by liking whatever video you're watching and subscribing, it would really help us do that.
So let's talk about the strengths and the weaknesses. As usual, I'll do the strengths because I'm the good parent, and the bad parent will do the weaknesses. So the strengths: ease of scoring. Biovore is putting a spore going, hey, I can do anything in the game. Did you box out at 25 mil base? Probably not. I'm doing every secondary in the game. Great mobility. Things like gargoyles, move 12, plus an advance, plus 6 more inches. You can get just pretty much anywhere you want. That leads us to primary denial, move blocks. Oh yeah, those gargoyles, OC2. Fantastic. Cheap, 75 points for 10. And they can get, again, up to 24 inches of movement is bonkers town. You can just put baby in the corner, say that you're not allowed to play the game, do that multiple turns. 45-point neuro gaunts, 11 bodies. Crazy for that. Making people take battle shock tests. No one is more annoyed than when they take a battle shock test and go, oh, so even though I have 77 OC on here, it counts as 0. Cool, I don't get any points. Big deal. Targeted defense. Nid, Armor of Contempt, the 5++ strat. When you're trying to move those gargoyles and all of a sudden you make a couple 5-ups feel, or 5-up invulns, feels pretty awesome. They have a ton of cheap wounds and a good amount of toughness. They've got a very combined arms kind of force where you have bodies that move fast, tons of trash, but then you've got the big boys moving after it. It makes for an army that has a lot of answers, gives your opponent a lot of questions, takes the board from them. Weaknesses, however, are going to come into play. I'll give you Distant English Dad to tell you about them.
That's right. That's me, Distant English Dad. So first off, if you've played Nids before, you probably have struggled to kill some Lich Guard. Just being real about it, Nids have some inconsistent offense. That is a big boon to the Synaptic detachment, is that reroll ones didn't wound strat. Pretty valuable. Then this goes along with it. You can be stat checked pretty easily. I don't think that the all War Dog list is particularly, an awesome matchup. And that's because we really lack high strength weapons to deal with multiple huge units at the same time. And finally, this is the first army I think we've come to where if your opponent really knows about all your little tricks, Nin's power level actually goes way down. Now, that being said, Nids have a lot of tricks, so they're probably going to know everything. And when we say this, we're not talking about gotchaing your opponent. We're talking about really understanding, no matter how many times you tell your opponent these gargoyles are going to go 24 inches and stand in front of them, you really have to see it to believe it, and then you go, oh no. But if you take precautions ahead of time, like putting all your flamers in front of your army so that those gargoyles just disappear, then the matchups start to get a little harder for you.
You know what you do with that, though? You make a plan. You lean into your strengths. Mitigate your weaknesses, as usual, in small letters. It is always better to play into your strengths. You don't want to completely ignore things, but don't try to shore up your army and make it something that it's not, especially when you're playing a couple different forms of these detachments. We've got some super key units here. Neurolictor's Deathleaper, cheap loan out, Battle Shock plays. They have a ton of options. One of the things that you have to make sure when you're making your army list with Tyranids is you give yourself all of the plays you could possibly have. That is their actual strength, is they just give you options to use against your opponent. Is it difficult to utilize all those? Yes, but make sure that you are a tool bag here. You have so many tools in your bag. How about that? So, Hive Tyrant, free stratagems, double use, decent melee, toughness. He can run up. He can do just so much. Depending on what fleet, he has a lot of different tools in his bag. Biovore, he does Biovore things. Gargoyles, I want 3 in my list now. They're just so ridiculous. You can win games just on Gargoyles alone.
Yep.
Move, blocking, screening, primary denial. If you put your opponent in the corner for 3 turns, it doesn't matter if he tables you after that. He scored nothing. Who cares? Maleceptors, big boys, invuln, pretty good for their points. Norn, big boy, costs a lot. You have to definitely, especially when you bring 3. Boo.
That's because Brad doesn't like big units. Let's be real here. But you can, if you are like me and you love the Norn, throw 3 of those in that list. Let's do it.
Boo. I have a boo. Hold on. You know what? I'm giving you.
Brad's got to find the boo. He's got to find the boo.
I gave you the no, bad no. So, Zoanthropes. -1 to hit is literally crazy. It is an aura. It's just a big deal. Now, it's not a monster, but man, when your opponent gets 17% less hits, it's a big deal. Ripper Swarms, again, they're wildly crazy cheap. Just put some in your army, deep strike them in, secondary, box out, it's nuts. Exocrines are probably point for point the best thing in the army as far as a damage dealing unit. Pyrovores, cheap scoring piece, removes cover. It's a combo play on that. Reroll 1s plus remove cover. Big deal. So, exactly. Brad doesn't like models that are as tall as him.
No, they found out, Brad. They found out why you hate it.
And that and the fact that I spend too much time on Norn Hub. So let's talk about practice. Robert Baker comes in with $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Robert. Gene Steelers in Vanguard. And Bond Ryan's probably. So
Yeah, I think gene stealers have a problem, Robert, in other places in that they are not quite as killy as you want them to be. And while they are fast, usually gargoyles can accomplish a move block for cheaper and do it more effectively just because of the shoot then move.
yeah, in Vanguard I don't mind though because you can just get there. You know what I mean? So
Brad's spoiling it. That is, if you want to see that, Robert, if you want to see Vanguard with gene stealers, just
yeah, we're gonna
hold on.
bring that up. They're not a key piece for me because they only work in a certain specific detachment and
That's
type.
right.
So with that, and also they are hella expensive for what they are. As always, being time efficient. Being time efficient means that you're getting the most bang for your buck out of your practices. You're talking with your practice partner. You're explaining what you're doing. You're asking for their advice. You're looking to go back and forth and get yourself the best practice time. So you can go, oh, wait a minute, Sean. What about this? I think maybe this would work better. He's like, no, I would do this to this. Figure it out. Just keep re-racking. It's very, very big again. When you're practicing as NIDS, when you're practicing anybody, but especially NIDS, scoring. I do not care how much stuff got killed or you killed of your opponent. Yes, you have to kill some stuff. But in the end, you don't get a star, a slap on the back, a sticky sticker, whatever, for killing all your opponent's models. You know what you get? If you have more points than your opponent at the end of the game, you win the game. Scoring. You have tons of ability to score. The Biovore spore mine placement is key on this, by the way, because you have to plan ahead and you should be practicing that. Don't just put a spore out and just kind of willy-nilly things. Go, can I score an objective? Can I do a secondary action with this spore and also do that thing that I want to do? You should be talking through. Basically, ask your opponent, if I put this unit here, what's the most annoying place I can do this to mess up your secondaries, to mess up your movement, to mess up a rapid ingress? You literally ask your opponent, hey, where would be the shittiest possible place for me to put this? And then work on that from there. Now, this is a trickier play, and this is why one of the big deals about practicing is Shadows of the Warp, your Battle Shock plays. I see this underutilized or just thrown out there randomly because I don't want to, you're like, oh, I don't want to forget Shadows of the Warp. I'm just going to do it now. You have to look for the times in the game that you are not able to steal the objectives away. That's when you're looking to slam down Shadows of the Warp. You're looking to do those combination of the Neurolictors. I don't need to pop a Shadows of the Warp if I'm already going to move, block, and steal objectives. You need to do it later on when you can't get to things or your opponent has boxed you out. You know, he went first, he made some good plays. That's when you do it. Shadows of the Warp and other Battle Shock plays for themselves are really when you can't get to and steal those points away from your opponent. And it's very important that you look for that and you don't waste your time. Don't waste units. Don't waste your Shadows in the Warp. You want to make sure that you're always getting value. And sometimes getting value is just move blocking. And a huge value for move blocking. And it's a big deal. Also, maximizing your defensive stratagems. Very, very big on this. Utilize that. Don't just pop things when nothing's going to happen. Always look for what's the potential for this to succeed. So, what's the plan, Sean?
Your opponent, you're probably not going to win a lot of games against an equally skilled opponent. You're going to move block second. You're bringing, what Brad said is, I think we're both on the same page there, if you're going to foe. And I think that's one of NID's worst missions because your Spore Mine is going to let your opponent get wildly ahead.
Only if you remember that it's a unit.
There's that as well. So one thing, if you're practicing on that mission, it will really show you the importance of what NIDS needs to do to win. If you play, out of your mind, you're going to do well, obviously. But if you just play willy-nilly, you're going to see on Purge the Foe, your opponent just, really rack up points against you. And the same things you learn playing on Purge the Foe, you will then take into other games where, as we, talk about what isn't working in our list and try to fix things, if you're just playing on that mission, everything else is going to seem like easy mode.
And then one of the biggest things I feel is talk about what isn't working. it's more important to look at what isn't working than what is working, to be honest with you, because sometimes you can get false positives. It's very important to start figuring out the things that you can cut and the things that you can add. And again, as always, make sure we're making our adjustments, that you're only adjusting a little bit of your army. Get that core concept. What is my list identity? And then you can take things in and out. Very, very important. The other thing is, don't make yourself play the list that you saw on the net. We're going to show some things that people played. They did well with them. Again, as always, the rule of cool one applies. The fact that somebody was using something doesn't mean that you have to use it. Make everything your own. Your play style is going to make a big deal. Make sure that you're also in the proper fleet. Well, some of these fleets can be argued back and forth. Which one is better? It's always better just for you, though. You know what I mean? What is your style? You really want the access to one of these stratagems. That's a big deal, too. If you feel like you're always missing something because you don't have that, well, play that fleet. Don't let somebody tell you that a fleet's better than the other if it makes you feel that you don't have the right tools. Because, again, we think that NIDs are a toolbox. It is, you want to have the right tools all the time, and they have those, but you have to have access to them at the right times.
There's also the consideration that we don't often talk about, but actually does come up when Death or Glory is practicing for team tournaments, is if you are picking this army, are you going to be able to move it around the table in an efficient manner? What am I talking about? I personally cannot play Unending Swarm. I will clock out every single game. I am a very technical and practiced player, and even then, I'm going to struggle to move around 200 models on the table. So keep that in mind too, is you got to paint 200 models. If that doesn't sound like you, don't do it. You'll go nuts. And especially if you have other cool things you love. Like, I don't know, triple Norns. I still love that a lot. Much cooler to paint, in my opinion. Much faster to paint, in my opinion, than 200 Gaunts.
So let's go into the struggles. It's a big deal on this. Tough targets seem unkillable. Seek alternatives. Move blocking. Die incoming. Battle shocking. Just leaving the area. Sometimes just speed bumping a flank while you try to focus down another flank. This is especially a big deal on GW terrain. The GW terrain is literally just made for taking flanks and focus firing down and not getting attacks back. Huge. You're not just going to kill the entire board of mids. Put a flank down and keep it down. Use your defensive move blocks for that. Again, using my defensive strategy, they just seem to pick up everything. Goes right with what I was saying. Give them less to shoot at each turn. Slow the game down. Maximize your defensive strats. If Sean's trying to go somewhere and he only has firepower for a specific area, move block the other area. Don't let your opponent have long firing arcs. Fight in small areas. Take the areas you can control. And the best part about Tyranids move blocks is a lot of them have big OC, so you can steal an objective while move blocking. It's very, very big. I love this. I don't need no sneaking Biovore. Play making points scored Biovore is half the reason the army compete. True story. This is mainly for me because I also think that I can play without Biovore. But...
Yep. I know, Brad. And I also had somebody locally who was like, I don't need no Biovore. And I was like, I mean, if you want to play handicapped, I mean, that's fine. But you should probably play it once and see how it feels, you know? Just try it. See how you like it.
I shouldn't play every single list on hard mode just to show that I can.
It's like, I'll show you, young whippersnapper.
So, let's recap the deal with the 5-step, Sean. I'm going to let you take this one away because I'm going to choke a little bit.
Yeah, okay. So first, if you've been watching this, you got to know your combos. You got to know what's good. You can check the timestamp again if you're watching this video afterwards. Write them down. Look at them yourself. Consider what you like and what you don't like. Try them on the table. By doing that, you're going to know what units are scoring. You're going to know what your combo does, what its reach is, and that's going to determine how you're going to pick units to score. What terrain you're using is actually really important for NIDs. I do like a more shooty NID list on player place terrain, whereas I can't seem to stop putting Norns in my list if I'm going to play GW terrain. And of course, you're going to play the list best suited not only for you, but also for the event. Then you got to know about your strengths and weaknesses. If you've been watching this, you should know that the strength for NIDs is in your tricks. Alternatives to just mashing big bugs into somebody. Gargoyles are phenomenal. You're going to be move blocking. You're going to be battle shocking. You're going to use Spore Mines in creative ways. And you are not going to just brute force your way into a game, because you're going to run into 10 Lich Guard with a bazillion characters attached, and they're just going to tag every unit in your army and stand there. And that does not feel good. And then as Brad slowly dies from choking, you're going to make a plan for Brad that would be not choking to death. NIDS, that's going to be building a list to score. You score so easily in NIDS when you commit your list to it. You're going to tailor your plan around the mission first, and then your opponent's army second. If they can't screen you, you can just take fixed secondaries. If you're playing on sweeping engagement and they have conveniently this perfect little 25 mil spot in the left corner of the board, you're going to put a Spore Mine there over and over again and score all your points.
That's a big thing on that when you're making your plan, everyone, is that if you're playing certain missions, it's such a big deal to identify which ones are things that you can take fixed on and which ones that you're just going to go tactical. If you're playing an army with limited model count on Dawn of War, just, man, teleport homers is just an auto max at that point in time. They're just not guarding everywhere on the sides. And if they are, cool. Then no one's on the middle objectives, so you just win anyways. So
and this one is free. I'll give you a free one. If you're playing on FLGs where you split the mission on player place based on deployment zones, for sweeping engagement, if you get the ability to place a little ruin in the corner, you can just stage Spore Mines there and then walk them in.
Yep.
So that one's free for anybody who wants to play on that and make your opponent very upset that they never get to shoot the Spore Mine before it scores the points. Then as you practice, practicing, I think Purge Foe is actually really good. It gets you in the mindset of how NIDS needs to play, but also you're going to focus on scoring, move blocking, and only killing what you absolutely have to. The goal, again, we can't stress this enough. You are not supposed to table your opponents with NIDS. Not that you can't, not that it won't always, it will never happen, excuse me, but that's not the goal here. The goal is to do the minimum you can, slow down the game, and let your crazy scoring opportunities and move blocking really carry you. And finally, make adjustments. If it's not working, stop doing it. It's what is it? What did Einstein say the definition of insanity was? It's
doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Different result. Yes, that's exactly right. So if something is not going right for you, change it up. Do not just take these lists we're going to get to. We're getting to, I promise. Do not just take this list and say, this doesn't work for me, NIDS are bad. Try different things. Work on it. Practice efficiently. And you're going to find the adjustments you need to make to do well.
Also, apparently try gourmet pears, since I can't get that goddamn ad out of my window now. But, I love that you put this in and I forgot to completely send you anything. I didn't even look at this part, by the way. Okay.
All right, Brad.
That's my fault. I may or may not have taken a lot of drugs and passed out, and I did not send stuff to you, and I forgot.
Only the most professional experience here. But, all right, Brad, why don't you tell us what you envision your list to look like, since apparently we're just going to have some empty slides with Brad playing Dark Angels with Tyranids.
Yeah, I was supposed to fill those in, everyone. I may or may not forgot. I do have them up on my computer right now to put in, by the way, which is not as good as having them in this particular slide. But
that's funny, Austin. You're right. But Brad is not a technological marvel. He is special in his own ways, and that is not one of them.
Well, the thing is I'm just going to go over John's list, because my list is very, very similar to John's.
All right, it is.
That he took to. I wanted basically John's list in Invasion Fleet, or that he took an Invasion Fleet. I would take it in Synaptic, and I would take an extra unit of Gargoyles. And excuse me, and I would just go 3 and 3 in my Zoes. I like basically Noah's Ark here. I was doing double Maleceptor, then do I say Noah's Ark, but then I added 3 to everything. I want triple Gargoyles, and I want triple Exocrine, triple Neurolictor, and I like to go 3s with the Zoes, and I also wanted 1 more unit of Neuros. So I want, sorry, he didn't even have Neuros in here, I apologize. I want 3 Gargoyles, 2 Neuro. I did not take a Neurotyrant. So I do want the Hive Tyrant, and then they're mainly the same here. It's a very similar approach on this. So, but it's move blocking, and this is specifically for GW terrain. So we're looking at GW terrain where you can really hit the flanks and you can punish and then move block because they give you those small areas to move through. So you know you've got great move blocking. So
yeah, I think this is a very powerful list. I did see John playing his last one of his last games against Ben Sherwin's Black Templars, and kind of emphasizing one of the problems that NIDs have, which is if you are just tough enough to present a problem with multiple units, then NIDs can kind of struggle because you have some damage, but if they're just moving up and giving you very little time to deal with it, basically trying to lengthen the game by moving quickly at you, then you might struggle a little bit.
Which, after play, though, I really think that's why triple Gargoyles and double Neuro Gaunts is a must-have for me, because it gives you enough wrap. If you can't deal with something, just put bodies around it and just stall them. Sometimes you're just going to give up on an objective and just wrap them and tell them to stay there on it and just go do other things. It's important to just have that, as sometimes you just don't have the resources to kill a certain thing. That's
exactly.
okay. Just make them not go anywhere.
I think that's kind of where John's going with this list. Haven't talked to him, so I don't know, but the 6 Zoanthrope unit really says to me that he envisioned there being a tough unit that he wanted to threaten his opponent not to deal with it. But if I'm them, I'm just going to run it out in the open and say, shoot me.
Yeah,
and I don't think you're going to do anything.
That's kind of, I just go trips on the Zoes too. It just gives me more just options of everything. So it's like I said, it's still very similar to this, but I want triple Gargoyles and I want 2 units of Neurogons. I just think they're must-haves for me because of the fact that you're going to meet certain things that you cannot kill, and you just need enough trash to wrap around them.
Yeah, and for anybody watching afterwards, we will have Brad's list in the description after.
Yes, it would be fantastic. But let's go to Hogan's list. I like this a lot. He's playing the Synaptic Nexus, Winged Hive Tyrant, triple Gargoyles, Biovore, double Maleceptor, double Neurolictor, double Norn Emissary with single Norn Assimilator. He's bringing the big boys. Double Pyrovore and double Ripper Swarm.
Oh yeah, this is my jam. Manic knows. This looks like so much fun to play. It does have one particular weakness, and we are hoping that weakness goes away soon. Crossing our fingers. In that, if you bring Thing Norns and they bring 3 Night Spinners and go first, your Norns are going to be very sad.
Enjoy standing there. Hey, look, it's a Norn. Yep, it's still in the same spot.
But you can see, obviously, Hogan did well despite that. I believe his 2 losses was to specifically that. Everything else, he pretty much ran through like, a hot blade through snow. Like there's nobody that could deal with this much trash. It brought the meat. You got 5 big things that's just really tough to deal with, and then he had just enough mobility to score all his secondaries.
I like this list quite a bit, even though it's a big boy list. Let's talk about Cooper's list from SoCal. This is a Vanguard list. It's running all the shenanigans. Broodlord, double Broodlord, 1 with the Neuro Node, Deathleaper, Winged Hive Tyrant, double Winged Hive Tyrant, I apologize, Exocrine, 2 units of 10 Gene Stealers, double Lictor, single Maleceptor, Neurolictor, double Ripper Swarm, 2 units of 6 Von Ryan's Leapers, and 3 Zoes.
Yeah, this is for someone asking how do we make Gene Stealers work, this is it right here. I think this is the best way to make use of Gene Stealers. I tend to agree with Manic. I think they're a little weaker. I also really don't like playing Barrel of Monkeys every time I play, and my Gene Stealers are like that. So if you still want to have a powerful list that takes a bunch of Gene Stealers, this is it. You got the Warlord, so you can actually deploy up as you need to, and if you don't go first, just bring them back. Or if you do go first, put your whole army in front of them. This is specifically also another good teams list against Guard. If you have the option to go first against Guard and charge every unit in their army on turn 1, that is not what Guard wants to see.
1000%. It's got some shenanigans, my man. I know. I was going to leave that alone, but Jeremy called you out. A hot blade through snow. It just really, man. You know,
I couldn't get to the hot knife through butter thing. Okay, come on, cut me some slack.
And let's talk about this crazy piece of Unending Swarm mojo. That's wild. Deathleaper, Hive Tyrant, Neurotyrant, Turf-Gon, 3 times 20 Gargoyles, 5 times 20 Termagants, Biovore, 22 Neurogons, double Neurolictor, double Pyrovore, and 2 Zoanthropes, giving you -1 to hit on probably all of them, because he's going to pinwheel back in. And this is annoying as shit. Holy God.
Yeah, this played correctly. It's almost that you just take a look at your own list and say, do I have enough? And the answer is no. You start the game, you know, willing to just say, all right, man, you got it. Let's roll some dice. Because, oh man, that's a lot of bodies.
It's just crazy time. There's just armies that just can't deal with this. Again, he did great in the open. This is a legit list, but man, it is my go-to team list for Tyranids. It is just unplayable versus certain things, especially when you get them the proper matches. It is just like, welp, I guess I don't score, you know. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, and also if you want to take this to, obviously Francois did very well at a reasonably large tournament, but if you're just going to take this and practice NIDS and give people headaches in your local meta, if you have the patience to paint that many bodies, because I know Brad and I are not doing that.
I actually think I might die with KR. KR goes,
Yeah.
I'd have to take morphine shots to play this. This would like cripple me. I would just be like, well, I don't know what else I'm doing, but it's not this.
Yeah, this is one of the things that's terrifying to play with and against. And it's actually, you know, we keep talking about it as a teams list. I've actually at Kansas City last year when Deathleaper was playing, I played my Grey Knights against the old Tyranids that was basically this list. And if I wasn't playing Stormbolters to the max, our team really had some problems dealing with that many bodies at once. So this is, when we say this is a teams list, like we have seen it. I've personally played against it in a big teams tournament. And it is very scary for your team in pairing when you might just get a loss if you mess up the pairings.
And on that note, let's Queens wave it out of here, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with us. Please put in anything you'd like to see. We're always up for doing a deal with it on anything different at all times. So on that note, everyone, thanks so much for hanging out.